Awesome.
Okay, welcome back to the Jiu Jitsu Mindset. This is Pete Deeley. The divine smiles on me every week, bringing me wonderful people to learn from and talk to, and this week is no different. Before I introduce our guest, I will remind you that Submission Coffee remains unclassified as a performance-enhancing drug, so you can get your subscription to it at thejujitsumindset.com. And we had a nice exchange with somebody who ordered it last week. So, Tim, I hope you're enjoying your coffee, and thanks for the nice emails. So this week we get the delight of get talk to Professor Jack Taufer. So, Professor, thank you for making some time to talk with me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So I'm always curious because when I get to meet the people we talk to here, and it becomes clear that there's lots of talents in the person that I'm talking to. That's not just jujitsu talents, and um, I'm curious if we redirected all the passion and the energy and the commitment that you've put into jujitsu in your life, and then you redirected it to something else. If that energy and time wasn't spent there, how would you be different? How would your life be different? What's different if you're not doing jujitsu as much as you are?
You, you know, um, I started jujitsu at such an early age. It's kind of hard to tell where it could have gone because it could have gone in any direction. My dad, he did like high-end woodworking and then like
Wow.
drafting plans, stuff like that, and got into like, machining. Growing up, all I cared about was skateboarding and
Hmm.
basketball. I don't think I would have made it in the NBA. If I would have pursued skateboarding, I could have done that. But uh, I started jujitsu when I was about 15, and so that was 1995, and so it was always kind of a part of even from my childhood into adulthood.
Right.
I did end up moving to California and took a job at a financial company. So there's a chance that I could have ended up at some like desk job, being working at a bank or an investment bank or something like that.
Right.
Um, who knows? I actually have no idea. Jujitsu isn't my full time job now, so
Yeah.
um, yeah. It's also interesting too because at any point in life you could just change direction, say I want to be this now, and just
Yeah.
start a new life.
That's
But
fun. Yeah. Yeah. That's the truth.
so I'll make a joke. I'm like, if it wasn't for jujitsu, I'd be a total pussy at a desk wearing a shirt and tie. How's that? Yeah.
Now, when you mentioned your dad as a machinist and a high-end woodworker, I'm just curious, and I'm curious if you feel like you share some of those skills. I mean, there's an engineering part of a person's brain that has that very precise, mathematical, mechanical, and I often find that people that do the type of work you just described have a really interesting balance between that and then an artistic, component to it as well, which is less mathematical and more sort of, I don't know, inspired by something other than the order of, linear order of things. I
This-
mean, is that an overstated thing for you and your dad? And because jujitsu often feels like it attracts a very cerebral approach to this physical experience, and it has, in my mind, those components. Like there's a mechanical part where, there's an order of operations, but then there's this artistic part in which you express those things, and I know that you got to have the basics before you can break the basic rules. I've seen your posts to talk about that, but I'm curious how
yeah.
what your opinion on that is.
It's funny because I didn't know exactly where you were going to go with your statement slash question. And when you were talking about, people with like high end cerebral stuff and mathematical and things like this, but I was thinking about my dad. He passed,
Mm,
but
sure.
it's like woodwork. I mean, you're creating beautiful stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, the different designs, and it is artwork. It's just a different, form of that stuff. Um, and then with me, with regards to jujitsu, it's highly technical and it is mechanical and it's based on physics and all that. But you and I could have taken the same exact classes throughout our life, and it both shows up in different ways on the mat.
Right.
Whether it's because our bodies are different.
Hmm.
Um, like you might be aggressive or you might be really chilled out. You could be insecure. You could be
Yeah.
overly secure.
Right.
All different kinds of situations that happen. So yeah, I guess the man of whether it's genetic or not, who knows? But the manifestation of it showing is definitely there. My dad actually, when he grew up too, or as a kid, he was a gymnast,
Okay.
and so I mean, he was highly physical,
Yes.
um, and then he was also highly cerebral. We had this like monster stack of books in our attic,
Oh,
and
awesome.
then my dad allegedly, I mean, I was just a kid, but I mean, it was like hundreds of books. But he was an avid learner, so he's highly cerebral.
Right.
But then, he would put that knowledge into work into the physical universe, and I guess that's what you do with jujitsu.
Yeah.
You have these goals and plans and strategies, and then you have to execute it on somebody else with your body on somebody else's body.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
curious about the gymnastics of did he teach you gymnastics as a kid? I have a very warm part of my heart about gymnastics because as a child, as a young child, like I had an uncle who was a gymnast, and he had me doing L sits as a 4 and 5 year old, and headstands and handstands, and I as I became a teenager, and he could do things that I didn't think he would be about my age now. I'm 55, and he could still do giant swings on the park, the swing sets. He would do giant swings and dismount and full layouts. And
Yeah.
it was always, and I feel like he gave me some physical tools, some proprioception tools that I wouldn't have got if I hadn't had gymnastics as a part of that early development. Did that play any role in your early kind of physical
Not
development?
not a ton, to be honest. I think the highest I got to was like being able to somersault.
Right, right.
So not exactly. We did go to gymnastics for a little bit, but I think he saw that we weren't exactly enthusiastic about it. But
Yeah.
so when I say I have a brother that's it's odd. My parents got this is a side note. My parents
Right.
got married on May 18th, 78.
Okay.
My brother Quinn was born May 18th, 79.
Okay.
I was born May 18th, 80, and then my dad died May 18th, 2011.
Wow.
But so when I was telling the story, I just realized I was saying we.
Yeah.
So we went to gymnastics. We didn't find interest in it.
Yeah.
We had an older half brother, Colin,
Okay.
who was big time into skateboarding. So
Okay.
we looked up to him, and it was also super cool. And it was the '80s, and they had
Sure.
crazy hair and listened to crazy music and stuff. So we were more interested in that. I think not so much the gymnastics, and plus there was like other girls in the class, and they were weird.
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, to take a little taekwondo, um, at the local church and Cub Scouts and stuff like that. But
Right.
as far as like physical activities, I think what I got from skateboarding is maybe more so the balance, and that translated into the stand up game, strong legs and good balance.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but
Not the gymnastics.
not so much the gymnastics. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, as we've talked already that physics is in your approach to gym and that mechanical sort of approach to learning. I
Mhm.
am curious. I mean, jiu-jitsu comes to you as a great time to learn jiu-jitsu as a 15-year-old. I mean, what better body that's not beat up and all the rest of it to come and
Right.
and learn that. Um,
Yeah.
and when you look at sort of in all these years of teaching jiu-jitsu and being in the community, and I think skateboarding shows up. I think Professor James Driscoll is a skateboarder too. I think we talked a little bit about that with him.
I think
Um,
the Chrome was, yeah.
yeah, that I don't know if it's interesting that that's shown up a few times in my conversations here, but
Yeah, and in Brazil, it's surfing and stuff.
oh yeah, without a doubt, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, sidewalk surfing to to
Wave
actual
surfing.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
But is your sense of learning jujitsu and watching people that do people acquire how to do it differently than other sports or other activities, or is it just another um, version of learning the typical sports or something? I'm just curious where the differences are.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the strategic aspect, um, or like game plan is probably because I'm sitting here comparing it to skateboarding. You're
Yeah,
obviously mastering your body and balance and movement and stuff.
right.
And I mean, usually with skateboarding, you're skating on stationary objects, but there are like thousands of variables that can happen at any,
Right.
given moment, and timing and stuff like that. Someone, you just have to time stuff. But with regards to the mental aspect of, um, you know, putting your physical abilities into execution, I think jujitsu is on a much higher level than that, because it's like, this guy's got good cardio. He's really strong with these things. I gotta, weather the storm and then push harder.
Right.
And I don't know that you necessarily you have to do that with your own body skateboarding. Like,
Right.
man, I've been trying this for like, 20 minutes now. I'm starting to fatigue. I gotta, but yeah, it's like then you're dealing with in jujitsu, you're dealing with your own fatigue and
Hmm.
then the other guy's attributes, and it's in constant motion. Both parties are constantly moving all the time.
Right.
Um, and then there's like and then you have to fight against his strengths or
Hmm.
avoid them, whether that's, so there's all kinds of things that you have to do. So I think the cerebral aspect in, at least compared to skateboarding, it's a lot more than jujitsu.
Yeah.
But I'm not really a big football fan, and I don't know why. I watched a few games. Like, I watched more football in the last, I don't know, 3 months than I have probably in the last 30 years.
Okay.
But, watching the strategy of, one team playing against another team, it's highly strategic, maybe more so for the coaches or the quarterback than
Hmm.
the individual athletes. So I don't know. So I don't think the learning of your body physically is that much different than other sports,
Right.
but the execution of it and then putting it into
Yeah.
like a strategy, I think that would be different. I think, yeah.
I was never a wrestler,
Mhm.
but I mean, think when I think of analogies, think, it's frequently talked about, right? But when I think about, I was a soccer player and a basketball player as a kid, and I could go practice kicking a ball around, and those I could apply, working on my own to being a part of the team very differently. I'm sure there are ways in which you can practice certain aspects of jiu-jitsu without other people, but that communal nature of learning and acquiring it via the interplay between you and somebody else is something that always strikes me, that this is it's you need other people to do this,
Yeah.
and that I like that. I think that's
Yeah,
good
no,
for us.
definitely. There's been plenty of times where I've been traveling or I haven't been able to get into a gym, but I'll go through the mental exercise. I'll do the moves again and again,
Yeah,
like in my mind, and
that's
I
interesting.
think that kind of helps me keep the. Honestly, I think there is really something to it. I
Yeah,
don't know if that's what people call visualization or things
sure.
like that, but I'll go over that armbar setup again and again and again, and I'll get the feeling in my even though I'm laying in bed, the brain body connection is definitely firing. I'm not necessarily doing the things with my legs and
Yeah, yeah,
all that, but I am. Those mental images that I'm going through are definitely, translating through to different parts of my body. So, and that's maybe something that people don't necessarily do in other arts. I don't know if I'm just the only. I can't be the only weirdo in the jujitsu community who does that, but
I'm confident that
yeah.
other people are working their way through that. The I think in some ways, like, the availability of watching jujitsu is so different than it when you were 15. There
Yeah,
wasn't.
we never watched shit. I remember I started yeah, 95, and it was like I remember uh it was probably 97 or something like that when I first saw the first jujitsu tournament. It was on a grainy VHS and stuff like
Yeah,
that. And I didn't like what I'm like, this is boring. Like, I don't
right,
like
right.
this. Yeah. Yeah.
But nowadays, I
Yeah.
think, like, when I think about how much I would like to be on the mats and then how much I'm actually on the mats, I would love to spend, much more time. However, I think all of the presence of, an Instagram and YouTube, of the people that I like listening to and the people that I find, have value as a teacher there, even though I'm passive in that regard, like I'm watching them sitting at my desk in between other things I'm doing. For me, it's a version of what you're talking about as you're going
That's true.
through. I mean,
Yeah.
that's been
Yeah.
helpful to me, even though I recognize that, like, for you, as you're rehearsing it, you have a level of excellence that you can then seek to repeat. I'm still seeking that, right? Like, I don't have
Yeah.
anything that
Right.
I'm so good at that I'm like, oh, I should trust my own sense of it.
Yeah. But even like, how many times after class, you had a great class or whatever, or the instructor showed a series of shit, and then you're sitting there lying in bed and your mind's still
Yes.
racing.
Oh, all the time.
Yeah. And you're like, wait, what was that setup again? Was it like this and then that, or that and then this? So to
Yeah.
some degree, I think we all do it. But yeah, I'm not, there's a different, well, I was just thinking about when you were talking, like watching videos. When I was coming up, there wasn't all these instructionals out.
Right.
So you couldn't go back and just watch that clip again or, review it. So maybe that's why I do it a little bit more in my head than I do
Right.
just finding the clip again and watching it or pulling out that DVD and putting it on. But yeah, so things have definitely changed. Yeah.
When I mean that the communal aspect that often comes up in these conversations of needing other people to learn. One of the things that I'm always curious about is the role of competition as a teaching tool. And
Mhm.
in your as you're talking with your students and over these years, have you do you have a very specific opinion on how important competition is for the ordinary learner, right? I mean, obviously there are people that come
I
in, they want to compete, but for the person that like is unsure, how do you advise those people?
Well, the last time I competed was around purple belt.
Okay.
And so I don't have a comp record at all. You know what I mean? For all intents and purposes, I'm not a competitor.
Right.
Um, my justification for that is, there's times where we're in like serious training mode, and I'm like fucking every comp or every class is a competition.
Sure.
Especially too, like you go to certain gyms and you got all these drop-in visitors, who want to
Yeah.
make a name for themselves, or at least not, bring a bad name back to their academy. So they're going a little harder than that you normally might, and just with your friends in your own gym.
Right.
Um, but you know, when I was competing and getting ready for a tournament, I really felt like win or lose after I got done with that tournament, I did level up,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
I really do think that there is a very beneficial aspect of competing 100%. And you stress test it and it
Hmm.
mentally makes you stronger and all that stuff. So I just don't feel like I'm the best person to comment on it because um, I didn't compete a lot, so I can't speak from that viewpoint from that lens. But I
Yeah.
do know that the times that I did do that, I felt like, gosh, I feel like I got 6 months of training in this 1 month,
Yeah. Yeah.
and your timing gets sharper, you feel good physically, you got to work around injuries,
Hmm.
different things, so you learn your body. We used to do drills like that all the time too. This is a side note. We can get into that more in depth, but tucking a hand in the belt, or like you have to pass the guard with only tennis balls.
Oh, nice.
Like
Yeah.
holding tennis balls in your hand or something like that. That would be more akin to like a no gi situation when we're in gis,
Right.
or getting pushed against a wall in the corner of the gym and having to figure out whatever mount escape from there or something.
Right.
So we would do that, like put limitations on the training or what you could
Hmm.
use. And sorry, that went back to competition training. Sometimes you have an injury and you're like, my arm's effed up and I still have 3 weeks to go. I can't antagonize it. So I'm going to have to do all the attacks on this side,
Right.
this class or this week. So, you push yourself, um, and you level up and you learn about your body and you learn about your mental fortitude and things like that. But, yeah, so I do think that competing is important, but do I think it's necessary? Absolutely not.
Okay.
Definitely do not think it's necessary.
Right.
Um, and I know some guys that you've never heard of that will beat the fuck out of most people,
Right. Right.
like
Sure.
including high level competitors. And
Yeah.
so that, just because they didn't go compete and make a name for themselves, that was, I don't think it stopped their progress at all. And then, like some people just aren't designed to be competitive.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
But
mean, I agree. I mean, I think there's, and as of late, like for whatever reason, the last few months, I mean, that distinction between jujitsu as a sport and jujitsu as a martial art of self-defense as its primary like function. Um, I recognize that competition is in the realm of a sport. I mean, it's different than
mhm,
maybe MMA aside. I mean, MMA is probably much closer to a self-defense environment that police officer may find themselves in, or I think it's a far cry from a soldier on the battlefield, but still there's a level of violence that's different than a sport jiu-jitsu tournament.
Yeah. And then, but even in like MMA, it's like, that there's a ref there, and then you've watched tape and you know who you're going against, and
Sure.
it's not sporadic and it's not all of a sudden an attack from behind that you weren't expecting,
Yes.
so, like even back in the old school UFC days, you didn't know who the next, like
Yeah.
your next opponent was going to be. It wasn't a single fight in one night.
Right.
And then, so and then even if you won, you didn't know if it was going to be, Pat Smith or Ken Shamrock. You didn't know which guy was going to come out after at the end of it. So
Yeah.
you didn't have a roadmap and a strategy.
Right.
Whereas and same with a tournament though, because tournaments aren't single elimination when you're competing in jiu-jitsu. But at least in MMA, you have that. I know his strength. I know what his game plan's likely going to be,
Yeah.
etc. But yeah. And so and then I don't know that there's a lot of reasons to do jiu-jitsu. You can learn it for self-defense.
Hmm.
You can learn it just to have fun, to stay healthy. You can learn it because you want to compete. You used to be a D1 wrestler, and then, there's no way in hell you're going to do that right now because you're just going to get all busted up and not be able to lift your arms up,
Yeah, exactly.
shoulders. And then so you got some friendly people that can push you and have fun and
Yeah.
camaraderie. And then, and then there's people who are like afraid for their lives, and then they just need to know that they can survive.
Right.
And all of those are very good reasons to train,
Yes. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, it's like jujitsu is very broad and kind of all encompassing.
And that
And so,
and for me, and especially where I am in my life, and in my observation of time, right? Like what you might think might be your life when you're thinking of your life as a teenager in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. Like I think your notion of what might be in your future is different. Every decade seems to be a rejiggering. And so for
yeah,
me,
I'm
right?
hoping I can wipe my ass at the end of the week.
Yeah.
Like that might be a goal now. Like, yeah.
I hear you, man. But
Versus, yeah, no, I was just saying, like, versus, yeah, when you're a teen, it's like, I want to conquer the world and I want to be able to be considered the toughest man on the planet. It's like, man, I hope I can get out of my chair at the end of the day. It's like you have
yeah,
different
absolutely.
goals.
That's
Yeah.
why for me, like sport or self-defense, I'm very much from the point of view have that I just want more people to do jujitsu than currently do jujitsu, and I would like for the
Yeah.
people who try it to try it for longer. I don't know
Yeah.
that everybody necessarily needs to spend 10 years in it and get a black belt and so on. I don't know but um when we started the podcast, we see too many people leave in year one, and we
Yeah.
feel like, oh,
I think that's the most common. Yeah.
I
White
think it
belt.
is, yeah, it makes the most, right? The blue belt curse, and you get your first taste of like acknowledgement, and I feel like people miss out on the joy of the experience. And for me, persisting is the thing that I'm hope to contribute somewhat to, right? I mean, the podcast
Right.
here is more about if you haven't been on the mats, get on the mats. If you're on the mats, give yourself a longer stay
Yeah,
than you
give it
think.
some time.
Give
Yeah.
it some time. I just think
Right.
there's so much pleasure that comes with building your physical vocabulary that until you get that vocabulary, it's hard to I think enjoy as much. I mean, over all these years, competition or not, like you have this giant catalog in your brain of roles and fights and whatnot. And I know it would be very difficult to sit and think about which one was the most memorable. But if I asked you just to react, is there one in your like lizard brain where you're like, oh, this role was the most memorable? Or I mean, clearly you've been around some extraordinary jiu-jitsu instructors, jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
legends. What comes to
I
most?
just will say this. I'll try to answer your question, but on the previous topic, I have a lot more that I would like to talk to
Oh,
you
please.
about
Yeah,
that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, about longevity and what's right for people and jujitsu for everyone and that type of stuff. But then getting back to the question that you just asked,
Okay.
but if you can help me not forget because there's some things
I
I would
will
like
ask
to
you for
talk
sure.
about.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, cool. But I don't know. The first one that came to mind is where it was about like 8 years ago. I was rolling with Rickson,
Yeah,
and he was mounted on me and went for a collar choke, and I was able to get answer the phone,
yeah,
swim my arm in and avoid just a cross collar choke while being mounted. And then, he rolls me over and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to, or I ended up ooping him and I'm on top inside his closed guard. And I'm just waiting for his hands to burn out or for him to readjust his grips and then, to get some posture. And then my hand he's like, he's got this pressure on my hand and it's moving like at a millimeter. I'm like, all right, I can be here all day, I thought. And
Hmm.
then I'm like, his hands have to be burning out, and all of a sudden my palm's on my neck and he's choking me through my palm into my own neck. And for whatever reason, that was like the first thing when you said that came
Yeah.
to mind.
Yeah.
Um, that was super cool. I remember rolling with Salo. I was a purple belt, Salo Hiberio. And he just effortlessly beat he effortlessly tapped me.
Right. Right.
But I would watch black belts come in there and he would do that. Him and Janji
Yeah.
we do the same thing to visiting black belts. And that's when I realized, there's like the skill level from white to black is like that. And then like black to black is
Yeah. Yeah.
like that. And so that was a memorable role with Solo. And then rolling with Pedro, as a 15-year-old kid. So he was very, very polite and
Right.
very friendly and welcoming. But everything with him was just kind of effortless and very smooth. And there's
Yeah.
roles with him that I recall. Let me just try to think if there's any other ones. I've been in a few where it was just like it came out like a fucking fist fight. It was
Sure.
like just like fuck, that was brutal. Oh,
Right.
one that actually I was at like a local eatery and they were playing the fights. It was like a bar slash restaurant, and I was there to watch the UFC. And I see these dudes sitting there and they're all fucking jacked or whatever, cauliflower ear, and where do you guys train this and that? I was visiting a family member, so I was out of town. I wasn't in my normal city. And they're like, oh, yeah, so and so. And I'm like, oh, I train jujitsu. And to a lot of people, I do not look like I train jujitsu. I just got told, you're a sleeper. Like, if we're in prison, you're the first guy I'd fuck with, like you're target number one. And, but anyway, so this guy, and he was definitely like thick neck, ears. And it's, side note, also, it's like, I'll watch people walk and I'm like, that guy trains, and then
Yeah.
it's like something about their upper back and their shoulders. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
I notice that's like trigger number one. And then I look at their ears. And then also like a lot of grapplers have, different necks than other people.
Right.
But anyway, so he invites me to this gym and he's a purple belt. We're wrestling, we're rolling gi. And it was like a hot, humid day. We're soaking wet. And the instructor puts me with him. We ended up in a fucking 40-minute like death match and I didn't catch him. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm slipping, like Jesus Christ, and I wasn't in peak shape or anything.
Right.
I don't know that he was, but it was like, it was brutal.
That sounds like a
You know?
long day.
Oh yeah, it was. But it's like there's times in my life where I've been in like peak shape. I'm definitely not right now.
Right.
But next time the instructor puts us back with each other and same thing, it was like another 40-minute roll, just like fuck. And I go back into the locker room, I'm changing. I'm like, you're fucking tough, dude. And he's like, you're tough. And I was like, how long you been training jujitsu? I'm like, how long you been doing jujitsu? And he's like, I don't know, like 5 years. And I was just like, fuck, man, I normally just clean up purple belt.
Right.
Wow,
Right.
okay. I'm like, and you don't have any other grappling experience? He goes, oh no, I wrestled in Iowa for 5 years. I was on their team. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
dude, it was a compliment. They called me tough. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, but that was not fun. But that was a memorable role,
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
that sounds like it for sure.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I'm curious. I mean, just because I've had a chance to talk to people that have rolled with Rickson, and I mean, for he's such a legendary status among folks. That notion of invisible jujitsu. I mean, surely you, as you got to train with him and then trained with others, it must be present in other people. I mean, it's not the provenance of just one man, and perhaps he's the pinnacle of the expression of that. But
Yeah.
um, what what do you how do you translate this thing that's probably difficult to put into words? Like what does that mean? And what's your experience of it as encountering somebody who's like really understands that proprioception that translates into pressure and balance and all those things. Do you have a way to
Yeah,
describe it?
yeah, I'm sure I can. I can articulate my understanding of it and what I've experienced with it. Um, but then there's the part that you can't explain, and I don't know, but I'm sure you've met some people who have it.
Yes,
There's an
yes.
X factor. There's a thing. And that's not tangible. There's just some people who are fucking, for some reason, can command the attention of a room. And
Right.
then next thing you know, like, they become superstars.
Yeah.
So there is an X factor that people have that's somehow not quantifiable.
Hmm.
And I do think Rickson has that. There's something
Without a
about
doubt.
him that's unique. But then he's a human being in a body, and I am too in a body, and we're on the mats together.
Right.
And so that's physics. And there's, um, it's just plain and just physics. And so what's really funny is the first time I started being vocal about Rickson's jiu-jitsu was at a time where, his son died and he
Mm.
dipped out. And there were some people online. It was the forum used to be called the Underground, MMA.tv. So they had the Other Ground and the Underground. And then someone said, hey, I wonder if like people would come on here, like Jack Taufer would share his experiences with Rickson and things like that. So I started writing about it, and and then also when I had a sister who had passed, but I did a little fundraiser, and shout out to Budo Videos
Yes, yes.
and Jake McGee for being a good friend for, I think it's well over 20 years now, since Blue Belt. But he, had me do some videos, but I wanted to showcase some things that from the outside you could not understand what the heck was happening.
Right.
And it like your ability to just stand up in someone's guard,
Hmm.
and it just looks like the person on the bottom has closed guard like everybody else, and for some reason the person can't stand up. So if you saw that it would be one of those videos that got passed around. Like, you see those Tai Chi guys or whatever, and they're like, boop,
Yeah.
and the guy goes, falls down, has a seizure. Or it's like, the stupid little,
Yeah, yeah.
those videos. And it very well could get fluffed around like that. But it's like, no, this is actually, here's what's happening. Here's the mechanics. Here's what you can't see.
Right.
And you're fucking with the guy's weight distribution, And then this is not the proper medium to get into the technique. But if you're on your knees in someone's guard, in order to stand up, at some point in time, your knee has to come in front of your hip.
Hmm.
It just has to mechanically for you
Right.
to stand up. You can't stand up, period.
Right.
So the person on the bottom is controlling the weight and the angle of the hip to where the person can't get up. So there's a physics aspect that's happening, but you cannot see that from the outside.
Yeah.
And so that's an invisible aspect of it.
Nice.
Most people, everyone in jiu-jitsu, and probably 99.99% of people, good posture in someone's guard is wide base with the knees, straight back. Do not look at your opponent, shoulders back like this.
Right.
This is posture. That's how I was taught
Sure.
in the beginning. And then it has nothing to do with any of that shit. And then, but don't use your hands, and the person just keeps, you can break a person down easy. But just with a couple of changes, it feels like you're wrestling like an oak tree. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, and it doesn't make sense from the outside.
Right.
So that's an invisible aspect of it. It really
Nice.
comes down to physics and body mechanics.
Right.
And then there's the weight distribution. The guy's on the bottom, and you're constantly, everything that he's moving, you just make heavy for him, or at least the important parts that he needs to move. You're just putting all your weight there.
Right.
And so you're just like, fuck, this guy's heavy. I can't move him. And it doesn't make sense. There's no space. So there's those things of it, which is physical. And yeah, there are a lot of athletes that have that, and they're tight and their timing's good, and
Right.
all that stuff. So, and then there's like, but when you're like connected to your opponent, and Rickson's a big proponent of training with your eyes closed, because sometimes if you're loose and you're just looking, you're jittery and you're constantly trying to feel and predict and whatever. But when you're actually connected to that other body, you can sense things, and it seems like it's premonition, but it's like you're right on top of it the moment it happens, because there's no lag between the arm moving and then the slack coming out of the gi and then it biting. You know what I mean? Because you're on it. So the second it moves, you're instantly registering what's occurring. So your timing's tighter, your weight distribution's better.
Right.
When you move, they move, because there's not all this wiggle room. So Rickson, he just personifies that in each position. And it's, the things that you can get away with other people, you might not necessarily be able to get away with him, because you just don't have the wiggle room, figuratively and literally.
Right.
Excuse me. I told you earlier I had a cold this week, so I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
drinking
Please.
I wish I had some coffee, but I'm drinking some green tea.
Yes. Take care of yourself.
Yeah. Actually, do you mind if I refill this with some hot water?
Please, by all means.
It'll take like 10 seconds.
That take
Okay.
your time. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So yeah. Anyway, so rolling with Rickson and that in mind, uh, oh, and then there's the X factor.
Hmm.
And, it's like I'm a fan of his, but I feel like I'm not just a fanboy because I'm a fanboy. I'm a fanboy because he earned my
Right.
respect. But there is something different about him. I
Yeah.
remember I was at a house party in California, and I think I had called Rickson earlier the week. He called me back, and I was off to the side and took his call. And then I had him on speakerphone because I was getting something ready in a bag or something like that. And when I hung up with the call, my friend, she knows nothing about jujitsu, and she's like, "Who was that?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's my jujitsu instructor." Didn't want to get into it,
Right.
and she's like, "He sounds like fucking Yoda." Like, it was like a really insightful conversation. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it actually was.
Right.
But there is something that's like an X factor about him, in my humble opinion.
I mean, I feel the same way. I don't have any experience. I mean, clearly, I'm a fanboy from as far a distance as you can, but
Yeah,
I do, um, Jiu-Jitsu aside, I find him an extraordinary, compelling figure. I mean, when you
yeah,
talk about walking into a room, regardless of his apex status and as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, I think he's an attractive figure to human beings because of the way, he talks and his knowledge and his humility, and a lot of what I know about is just listening to podcasts and reading, his books and whatnot. Um,
yeah,
when you think about, you made a joke earlier, like, hey, physically at the end of the week, I'd just like to be intact. Um,
yeah,
when you think about doing jujitsu for a long time, and for a person like me, coming to it later in life, I just feel like my learning curve is so slow, but I also am patient about it. Like I intend, as long as I'm alive, I know I'll be on the mats in some way, shape, or form.
yeah.
You wanted to talk a little bit about longevity. I'm curious about your perspective and how do you just keep going?
Yeah, longevity was part of it, but then the purpose of jujitsu is
Okay,
kind of
yeah,
what I
tell me
also
about
wanted to
that.
get into. Um, you know, um, it's like some people they're just in the house and they get really bored of just going to the gym and just moving weights,
Yeah.
and that's a very beneficial activity, just
Hmm.
moving weights. But there isn't a social aspect of it.
Right.
You are improving your body. You could be injuring it too, and you're gonna work through those things. But you're putting your body to use and generally staying healthy and making sure your diet corresponds to your goals. So you might want to leave that kind of a gym and go to jujitsu because it's a skill with your body and there's a social aspect. You know, some people want to learn how to defend themselves. Some people, it's funny. I brought this up at a gym and I was like, "Who here started jujitsu to become a world champion?" This kid's like, "Me." Like, you didn't know what jujitsu was, and you decided like, "Oh, there's these weird guys on the ground sweating and shit, and whatever that is, whatever they're doing, I'm going to become the best in the world." Like, I don't think that's normally how it starts, but most people get in there for a purpose other than becoming a champion. And then when they start learning it, then they have those aspirations.
Right.
But there's nothing wrong for doing jujitsu for any of those reasons,
Right. Right. Yeah.
Um, and like I've got some colleagues and friends, that talk shit about sport jujitsu, and I don't even know the names. I just commented on a friend's post. I'm like, I need to learn how to speak jujitsu because like I don't know what a K guard is or a koala guard, and I don't know if those are the same things or not. I have no fucking idea.
Right.
And
Right.
it's actually a problem because I was on the phone with Chris Burns 2 days ago,
Yeah.
and we're talking about a move, and it's like, the one where, and we both look at each other like, we're not doing this. The one where you go for the armbar. Are we standing or on the ground? No, dude, we're on the fucking ground. But I'm good. Are you on top or on my bottom? Is it cross-side or where? It's like you take your left hand and like, okay, we're done.
Right.
So
Right.
having a language that you can communicate moves definitely helps.
Right.
Um, But you know, going. I have a friend, Matt Kirtley, and he's like, I don't drink. I'm married at the time. He was married. He's like, I do jujitsu to geek out, get out of the house, and do stuff. And
Right,
so
right,
for him, all the weird, fun, twirly whirly stuff is perfect for him, and it
right,
served his life very well. You know, and then for me, I learned it because of self defense. Other people, you know, it was in a college class and it was free. Why not take it? You know,
sure.
maybe I'll meet some hot Brazilian chick. Like whatever your purpose is, fine.
Right, right,
But it was Henry Akins who said this to me one time. He just said, "Why not learn a jujitsu that works in self defense? It works in gi and no gi, and then you know it will work in a competition mode."
right,
So for me, that's a really complete, like logical way to approach it is like you cover all the bases.
right,
You learn moves that are going to work in self defense. You have the social aspect of it. Maybe you feel like you're drowning in a gi, and you're not drowning in a or no gi, or it's too slippery, or I don't like that's gross,
right,
whatever. But like you're learning something that applies to all the situations, and you can
right.
get really, really, really high level at that. So I, you know, and then there's like to compete and be the best at something is a good goal. There's nothing wrong
Nothing
with
wrong
having
with that.
a
Yeah,
goal. You know, so then the strategies about getting the advantage and then stalling the rest of the match, cool. But that doesn't translate into like, you know, self-defense and
right.
protecting yourself. So I mean, I guess my point is going back to all of that is, you know, the jujitsu can be for anyone and everyone. And you said one of the stated podcasts or purposes of this podcast is to help people get through that first year
Yeah,
and then have more people do jujitsu. And so if you look at it from that lens, you're going to cover all the bases
yeah,
and you know you can help people learn something that could be like save their life in a real life situation
right.
and have fun and take those skill sets up into the higher echelons of the sport, you know, things like that, or become a fighter.
Yeah, and
So
I have an opinion that like the what happens translates into unseen parts of your life. I think that you know, other than as a kid, and I don't think I'm unusual, I'm not in a lot of street fights, and I haven't been in a lot of street fights as an adult. And have I been antagonized and whatnot? Yeah, I have been, but you know, a lot of self-defense notions was about not putting myself in a fight, to be
yeah,
frank, and that's I think the foundation of my self-defense is to don't be in a fight,
not
and
get
that's
there in
a
the first place.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly in the first place, and I say that in from the standpoint of I think many people's ordinary experience is similar. I don't know that that I'm unique in that regard. However,
yeah,
I do feel like the experience of fighting and you know, to the extent you want to call that in training, when you get off the mat, you have a different relationship to the world. You feel like, should I have to do this or that? To the extent you'll be able to execute or not, I think it's hard to evaluate because when I think about the violence that I've experienced, and I think as a kid, I was out with my grandmother and my aunt, and we were mugged by a group of kids, and you know, it was a fast, violent experience that didn't end in tragedy, but had the makings of could have been all kinds of terrible things could have happened.
yeah,
But there wouldn't have been any training that there was no Bruce Lee moment where one of us was going to turn and deal with these kids in any violent way.
yeah,
Um, so I guess what I'm saying is when you talk about it's for everybody, I agree. And when I look at the kids, I think particularly the girls, and I have a blended family where I have four daughters, you know, and boys have the experience of jostling with each other or fighting. I think it matters later in life to kind of have that experience. So I love to
yeah,
see the girls experiencing that as well, because I don't know it's
yeah,
as natural
yeah,
for them to have it. So I'm very much in line with what you're saying, and it's the intangibles that happen for me as a business person in my business dealings, my ability to deal with stress, my ability to recognize when I'm not breathing right, you know, in the midst of just ordinary life that I feel like of all of my athletic endeavors, this holds a unique place. It's had a unique effect on me compared to other things. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
That's where I'm at with it.
Excuse me.
Not at all.
No, yeah, and like, yeah, I'm just kind of processing what you said. Sorry about the crap experience that your family had gone through. But yeah, like, having girls and wanting something that they can protect themselves with, or just used to like, physical contact and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
That, um, yeah, I mean, it's a kind of a lot to unpackage there, but I think jujitsu covers all the bases of something fun,
yeah,
productive, keeps you engaged. It's cerebral, so your brain's still working,
right.
all that stuff. It's like it covers the bases for a lot of different needs that someone would need in life, and not to mention you meet, generally speaking, really cool people that you wouldn't normally meet.
Without a doubt. I mean, that's been
Yeah,
one of my great pleasures, particularly in the podcast where I've talked to so many people that have done, amazing things, and there's been a real common thread of humility and interest in, not presenting themselves as something particularly grand. I mean, everybody's had a very lovely conversation with me, where I'm not coming in and someone's expecting me to treat them a certain way because they've had a certain level of achievement.
yeah.
Pedro Sauer was an early conversation,
Now,
and
scrolling through before I hopped on with you, I was looking at some of your guests. He's a great guy. But what were you going to say about Pedro?
so he was just, in our conversation, he's like, jujitsu has a tendency to kind of squish out, is the word he used, a lot of negative parts of your personality, and
Yeah,
to the extent that that's true, I will say that everybody that I've talked to, even the luminaries in the sport, have been very much like that.
yeah,
So I don't know, compared to um, other sports where you get so much attention as an individual and your ability to do something just by yourself, where jujitsu is in the context of community and other people.
yeah.
I
Funny, actually, 95-ish. I was probably about 15. My parents didn't even know I was doing jujitsu. I heard about it. I looked it up in the yellow pages. I would take the bus up there,
nice.
and I was the youngest and smallest person in the class,
Hmm.
and I was if 140, like soaking wet.
Sure.
But I remember I was rolling with this guy, and for me, it was survival. I was getting picked on and stuff like that. So I had a scared
Yeah.
um, reason for learning it, and it's like I'm scared application of applying it against grown ass men.
Sure.
And I remember this one guy, we're rolling, and I'm trying to remember how it happened, but long story short, I remember he like he got a gi choke on me, and I'm like a 15-year-old kid,
Sure.
and he's like smashing my face and like
Oh,
split my lip, and it was bloody. I ended up having this big bruise across my chin later, but he was like, I tapped or whatever, and he's like, "You want to fucking go outside? You want to go?" And I was just like, "No, dude, like what?"
yeah.
And I was so confused. And plus, I'm like, "You're a grown ass man, dude. I think that I
Right.
can pose a threat to you. Not to mention you're a higher belt than me,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you got man weight, strength, and
Sure. All that.
everything on me, all the things." I remember I ended up telling one of the purple belt instructors, and um, he was like, "Which one was it?" I was like, "That guy." I'm like, "I don't know. Can you find out what I did?" He's like, "We'll take care of it." So there's that. The any
Matt
douchebag
Enforcer.
out there, yeah, has politeness beaten into them.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I think every gym has their Matt Enforcer to kind of keep those, that personality in check.
In
And
check.
I
Yeah.
remember we have, Megaton is
And for
local.
all I know, I was the fucking idiot spastic white belt. Like I'll give them that, but still, I was 15.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. That's not right. I mean, I don't know. There's any way to spin that as something that's okay. I mean, you should
no, no,
be
no,
taking care of your training partners.
right.
I mean, as it had these profound effects on you in this long time of observing jujitsu's effect on other people, similar to the notion of your most memorable role. Do you have a story? And I'm sure you have many stories, but one that kind of pops to the top of this, the surface. If I ask you, what have you observed as the most profound effect jujitsu had on somebody that you've observed in the community?
of someone, not including myself, like
Yeah, yeah,
experiencing.
yeah. I'm just, yeah, curious, something that you observed outside yourself. Yeah.
It's a good question. Um, I don't know. I there's been times where like I've taken like a first date to a jujitsu class. I've had that. I've done that before. And then I'm in sales, so I talk to people, and I whatever is on my mind, I promote. Like I just naturally do that.
Sure.
But I think. Sorry, this is just the first thing that happened. This girl was. I'm like, I could literally teach you how to pick me up and body slam me. And it's like, there's no, like, there's no way. Look at me, look like there's no way.
Right.
Like, no, you're stronger than you think. And so I love teaching just a basic hip throw,
Right.
and it's obviously no resistance and all that stuff, but they get me off the mat and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm a rag doll at this point. You could throw me. And then, you see their little like
Yeah.
little horns poke out of there. Like, I can't, oh, I can't. It's like boom. And they didn't realize what, technique, leverage, and timing,
Right.
actually how powerful a person can be.
Yes.
Um, or even just a choke. Um, but yeah, so I've just seen a few faces like with like teenagers, and then a couple of women in class that are petite that they
Yeah.
didn't realize what they could actually do. I was teaching at a United Defense Tactical. It's a shooting club, and it's now all over the country. But I was teaching in their headquarters in Orange County, California, and uh, we had self defense classes that I was teaching. But there was one girl who her boyfriend, she was petite too. And
Right.
she's like, I want to become an MMA fighter. I was like, okay, cool. Well, we're focusing more on this stuff right now, but
Right.
come to every class. And her boyfriend was good friends with like a really, really well known jujitsu guy.
Okay.
And it was like, oh, so he was kind of like, yeah, my girl's learning jujitsu. And he's like, oh, I know, Professor Jack. Like, yeah, I know she's in good hands, whatever. And and he was like, okay, let's see like, what'd you learn? It's like, well, if I'm in the guard, and then boom, she slaps on his armbar, almost snaps his arm. And he's like,
Oh my
okay,
goodness.
yeah, like, yeah. And she was like, don't me, you know what I mean? Like in a fun way, but
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I'm doing this shit for real.
Right.
And so just to see her confidence level shoot up, and like,
Yeah.
him look at her in a different eye. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
whoa, you're the girl that when she's sick, she like sick, she like, she cries or whatever. And then
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
like, no, there's another side to me too. Like, I'll break your fucking arm. So he's like, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
empowering in its own way, and I think that's part of what I think when I talk about things coming off the mat. I mean, I think
yeah,
she'll hold herself differently in the world for
yeah,
the knowledge that, hey, I'm not defenseless out here, and
yeah,
I think it can be, particularly if you've been the victim of violence early on in your life,
mhm,
or somebody, whatever you want to say, that you can be imprinted in that way, like, oh, I'm less capable than I actually am. So
yeah,
it's an thanks for sharing that. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, not everybody wants to answer this question, but I'll throw it out to you anyway. Like,
Okay, now I'm curious.
if we
Like,
were,
I do. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
okay, good. So if we were going to give you a superhero name for
oh, right.
you as a jiu-jitsu player, what would you say?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So your
Oh,
jujitsu superhero name, if that's
oh,
the
what
one
would
that,
it
yeah,
be?
yeah,
Well,
and
because you were kind enough to send me typically the questions that you
yeah,
ask on
yeah.
the podcast, and so I looked at that, and it's really stupid, but I'm like, oh, jacked. But then I started thinking about Mortal Kombat. There was I think it was in Mortal Kombat 2. There was that black dude with metal arms.
Yeah,
His
yeah.
name was I think it was jacked.
There we go.
So fuck, might as well just stick with that. So
I
yeah,
love it. All right, Professor
yeah,
Jack. That's
yeah, yeah,
let that go forth. Well,
exactly. Thank you.
listen, this has been terrific, and I appreciate you sharing everything that you've shared with me. And perhaps you come back a second time, and we can
Yeah,
talk
I'd
some
love to.
more. But
Yeah,
this
I'd
was
love to.
wonderful. So thanks for everything.
Yeah, thank you very much.